Hey, welcome back to Somi's Chai and Chat. Today's episode, we will dive deeper into Satyagraha and Gandhi's principles and experiments he did on Satyagraha while he was still in South Africa. Stay tuned. Gandhi first went to jail in 1908 in South Africa. And he mentions his experience in jail and also implementation of principles of Satyagraha there. Gandhi observed that in jail there were some of the regulations that prisoners had to observe. And he mentions that if those principles are applied to normal, regular human beings who are observing brahmacharya, then that practice itself, which is more self-reliant, will enhance the livelihood or the spiritual connection of a human being. Few of the examples he provides are like complete finishing dinner before sunset, that is eating the last meal before sunset, and Indians and African prisoners were not allowed to consume tea or coffee in the jail. And also they could not add additional salt, and only for satisfying their palate. So this was triggers for Gandhi, because he was thinking that probably this could be applied to day-to-day life rather than just when people are in jail. Then what would be the impact on the spiritual aspect of a human being? And Gandhi gives an example that he asked one of the jail medical officer to give them curry powder and allow them to add salt while the food was still cooking, because they weren't adding salt to the food. They were only allowed to add it later on. And the jail officer says that you're not here to satisfy your palate, and from the viewpoint of your health, you don't need curry powder. Therefore, even salt you can add, if you really wanted, you can add after cooking. Therefore, he just denied Gandhi's request. He did once he came out of jail, he did apply a couple of those rules that he learned in jail, that is not eating after sunset and stopping the consumption of tea. Therefore, these two he was observing throughout for some time in his life. After that, he gives an example about his wife's life, where Kasturbai had a issue with her stomach, and she was not getting well with any of the therapies that she was going through. They had issues with the doctors, as well as they were giving medications that were not in line with the values that Gandhi's believed in. For example, one of the medical officers tried to give beef soup when nothing was working, and Gandhi completely denied for his wife to consume beef soup, and he also asked Kasturba if she wanted to have it, and she denied as well, which therefore forced them to adopt a lifestyle of a different style of medication or medical practices. And one of them was hydropathic treatment. And Gandhi has a humor in his book when he mentions where he was seen as a quack by his own wife, and she never believed or trusted in his ways of treatments. Therefore, finally, for her medical issue which she was going through, he suggested for her to give up on pulses, and she was not ready to do that, but instead she threw a challenge at Gandhi, saying, why don't you give up pulses? instead of telling me. And Gandhi took it as a challenge, and that's when he stopped consuming pulses so that he can also provide moral support for Kasturbai and also prove that he can survive without pulses. This instance is one of the sweetest recollection of Gandhi's life, and it is one of the minor instances of Satyagraha in his own house which took birth. And therefore he does mention that provided for Gandhi, this is giving up on something is easy, it appears like, because he says he never craved for anything that he left, and he was more focused on how he felt and how the senses were more subdued than before, instead of putting focus on the craving part. I'll quote a line here: the diet of a man of self-restraint must be different from that of a man of pleasure, just as their ways of life must be different. End quotes. So if you are focusing on being more self-restraint, then self-denial is good for the soul. However, if you are focused on having more pleasures, enjoying more of those pleasures in life, then of course your diet and your thoughts that aligns with those will be very different. Gandhi also goes in depth about giving up on milk and supporting that action with a lot of other scenarios that goes around. For example, consuming milk will trigger animal instincts in humans, and for the milk to be produced, the cows have to be treated in a certain way, or buffaloes have to be treated in a certain way. And even these, in early 1900s, about 100 years ago, the same scenario Gandhi was thinking about. However, there are diet and medical reasons and our gut health, and there are more evidence today to support both of the cases, to support why we should consume and also to support why we shouldn't consume. Therefore, it's just a question from my end, that is it just our mindset that we need to change or work on in order to stick to a particular type of diet, or is it more of the communal structure we build around, or is it the information we consume? What is it? I don't have an answer, but I have been pondering on these thoughts. My consumption of food vary from going 100% vegan to moderately vegetarian diet. Continuing, Gandhi also says how he took up eating only fruits, and that too cheapest fruits, because he wanted to experiment living poorest of the poorest. Cooking was never done, and the items they consumed involved raw groundnuts, bananas, dates, lemons, and olive oil. Those were their regular foods. The final line from this is, if you are working towards self-restraint, then diet is very good area to focus on. Changing your diet will make you much more strong and cleansing, and also stronger in self-restraint, in whatever restraint you're trying to put on yourself. With that, I'll open up for reflection. I have already shared my thoughts on some of the things that I think about what Gandhi has mentioned in the book. Think about these self-restraint, and would you ever go through that, or would you ever think of doing anything like that? And do you think what Gandhi did, was it necessary, or is life is to there to enjoy and enjoy the pleasures than putting yourself through those self-restraint thing? Is that needed? Think of those, reflect on those, and we will catch up on the next episode. Bye bye.